Hey folks, Seth Leibson here. It's that time of year again. Guns Etc. huge anniversary event. This year it's on Saturday, October 24th only. There'll be tons of giveaways and one-day only discounts in the store. Over the years, this event has turned into a gathering of folks who love America and the right to bear arms. As you know, our world may dramatically change on November 3rd. Can you imagine what a Biden-Harris administration will do to the Second Amendment then? If you're concerned about that, make sure you visit Guns Etc. on Saturday, October 24th. For more information, go to gunsetcetera.com. And if you like these monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Well, welcome back and happy Friday, October 23rd, 2020. Reflections on current contentions. Item. It's hard to overstate the import of the announcement today that President Trump has brokered yet another Middle East peace deal. This is the third this year, and it may be the most consequential, the Sudan. The Sudan was the heart of darkness in the Arab Islamist world. It was the center of terrorist training camps. It was the home of Osama bin Laden. The PLO murdered the U.S. ambassador to the Sudan. And Sudan's capital, Khartoum, was the city of the famous three no's. We discussed those once before. It was in 1967 in Khartoum, where the Arab League met to announce no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiations with Israel. President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have now turned that into the three yeses. This is a monumental achievement. If any other president did this, it would be worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize. But then again, the Nobel Committee has so diminished itself, I'm just as happy to see no prize from there. Item. Don't count me among the analysts who think Kristen Welker was an amazingly fair moderator last night. Early on, about 10 minutes into the debate, Donald Trump was answering a question about the pandemic in young people and rattled off a few stats, ultimately saying 99.9% of young people recover. Then, Kristen Welker, on her way to going to Joe Biden for a response, interjected and said, quote, "And of course the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it." Close quote. Wait. Whoa. Why was that her business to say? Was she a participant in the debate? Was her job to add statistics to full and complete answers as rejoinders to the candidates as she transitioned and teed that rejoinder up for the candidate's response? I mean, she could have just as easily said, and of course, according to the CDC, young people are 0.05% of the fatalities from or with COVID, numbering 108 out of over 200,000. Or she could have said, and of course, according to the CDC, older adults constitute 78% of the fatalities from or with COVID. Or she could have said, and of course, according to the journal Pediatrics, children rarely transmit COVID. She could have transferred over to Joe Biden with anything like that, but no, she had to add a disputed statement in transferring over to Joe Biden. Or she could have said nothing, but what she did has a word. It's called getting in the last word. Not her job. And she did it poorly. Consider, after Joe Biden denied saying he supported banning fracking, did she transfer a question over to Donald Trump saying, and of course there's a fair amount of tape showing otherwise? Okay, that might have been too obvious, but how about when Joe Biden answered, quote, because we had a Republican Congress, to the question why he didn't do prison reform while he was in office? Why didn't Ms. Welker say, and of course you had a Democratic Senate and Congress for several years when you were vice president? That actually would have been accurate and not loaded, unlike what she said about children being able to acquire and transmit the virus. Oh, and did she ask a single question about the Hunter Biden scandal? No. Item. I called it the Hunter Biden scandal. That's wrong. It's the Joe Biden scandal. Quoting from James Freeman of the Wall Street Journal, Michael Goodwin reports Tony Bobulinski appears to confirm that contrary to his denials, Joe Biden was involved with his son Hunter's business, and it was not a business in which a future president ought to be involved. The Bobulinski statement published by the Post reads in part, I am the CEO of Sino Hawk Holdings, which was a partnership between the Chinese operating through CEFC Chairman Yi and the Biden family. I was brought into the company to be the CEO by James Gilliar and Hunter Biden. The reference to the big guy in the much-publicized 2017 email, May 13th, 2017 email is in fact a reference to Joe Biden. The other JB referenced in that email is Jim Biden, Joe's brother. Hunter Biden called his dad the big guy, or my chairman, and frequently referenced asking him for his sign-off or advice on various potential deals that we were discussing. I've seen Vice President Biden saying he never talked to Hunter about his business. I've seen firsthand that that's not true, because it wasn't just Hunter's business. They said they were putting the Biden family name and its legacy on the line. I realized the Chinese were not really focused on a healthy financial return on investment. They were looking at this as a political or influence investment. The Biden family aggressively leveraged the Biden family name to make millions of dollars from foreign entities, even though some were from communist-controlled China. If it's true that Joe Biden was accepting influence payments, including from Chinese entities, then he should immediately quit the presidential race. Item. Ted Van Dyke, a prominent Democrat and author, writes the following in the Wall Street Journal today, quote, "Major Democratic leaders and many in the media have characterized President Trump as relying on a political base of white supremacists, gun nuts, religious extremists, and other deplorables, to use Hillary Clinton's term. To the contrary, he was elected and sustained by a broad coalition of voters who were simply fed up with establishmentarian candidates and policies. Mr. Trump's ascension, coupled with the Democrats' near nomination of Senator Bernie Sanders, represented a vote for discontinuity. Contrary to his depictions by critics, Mr. Trump has not been a would-be dictator or abuser of the Constitution." Mr. Van Dyke continues in a piece titled, "Can Biden Restrain His Party's Left?" that over the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, quote, "I hoped my Democratic Party would rethink its own agenda to get straight with the moderate voters who had defected to Trump in 2016. But instead, its congressional leaders, abetted by many media figures, have focused on the president's alleged collusion with Russia, a one-party impeachment lacking a solid basis, judicial confirmation hearings resembling Jacobin street trials, and Mr. Trump's pre-presidential tax returns. The major notions floated over this period, a Green New Deal, a big new benefits for multiple domestic constituencies, an emphasis on race, gender, and ethnicity, and policy formation, all have some serious substantive problems and are principally championed by vocal factions within the party. Added to these have been dubious recent proposals to pack the Supreme Court, end the filibuster in the Electoral College, and admit 2 new Democratic-leaning states producing 4 new Democratic senators," close quote. Van Dyke's point, this won't work with the electorate. And yet, that is where we are. Well, not we, but the Democratic Party. And there's more, of course. But Mr. Van Dyke is right to flag those issues. This, among my 6 other reasons I gave in a monologue 2 Mondays ago, is why I remain optimistic. So let us continue to be operational pessimists while we remain theoretical optimists. I know that's the reverse of normal daily life, but heading into an election, I believe that is the right temperament for our dispositions. Operational pessimism, as if we're losing, but theoretical optimists, knowing we are winning. Item. Outside interference from Russia, China, and Iran, what happened to the issue of foreign policy and national security in this campaign? Was it ever addressed in the debates? No. I suppose that's a luxury of a great set of decisions by this president. When there's peace, we have the luxury of not worrying about foreign policy, but is it not an issue? We took ISIS off the field of battle. We took Qasem Soleimani off the field of battle, started no new wars, deployed no new forces in new countries. Is that not something to talk about? It was not our side, after all, that called ISIS junior varsity and allowed them to develop and metastasize. It was our side that put an end to it. It was not our side that overthrew the government of Libya and turned that into a miasma. It was not our side that made old allies nervous or shipped billions of dollars to terrorist regimes. It was our side that created a new space force. Item. I think these debates are ultimately at the same time meaningless and important. Important for viewers to get a true measure of the candidate, as there are no teleprompters and they have to show what they can do on their feet. I think they are meaningless because even as of right now, circa 3:10 p.m., the day after the debate, it's already nearly forgotten and will be fully forgotten by Monday. Hell, we move so fast that I remind a week ago the issue was Amy Barrett. And yesterday, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted her recommendation to the full Senate. How much talk on that has there been? Or try this. Can you remember a single thing that was said at the Biden or Trump town halls a week and a night ago? Item. If CNN does not report it, did it happen? If the New York Times does not report it, does it happen? As of 2 p.m. and earlier all day, CNN's website says and said nothing about the Sudan peace deal with Israel, and neither does the New York Times website. It's as if Middle East peace is not important. Well, it's not anything if it didn't or doesn't happen, right? It was in that old Kurt Vonnegut story, Harrison Bergeron, I referenced it yesterday, that we were given the postulation of a handicapper general, the officer assigned to scrambling people's thoughts so that they would not have their wits or be able to remember anything important or think for themselves. What an interesting thing to consider. George Orwell and Kurt Vonnegut were not writing fiction. News to them, I suppose. News speak to us. And recall in his appendix to 1984, Orwell wrote the word freedom, quote, could not be used in its old sense of politically free or intellectually free, since political and intellectual freedom no longer existed, even as concepts, and were therefore of necessity nameless. Close quote. I honestly think our election is about all that, the meaning and preservation of the word freedom. It could disappear. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.